Steve's got flames. Carrie's got, I love that. I think those are firecrackers. All right, we are 2 minutes out. It is time to flame up this chat. What's up, y'all? It is going to be on in just a couple short minutes. As you jump on, share where you're coming from. Even so, it as well has joined us. Madam, it is great to see you. We've got a lot of flames in the chat. We are 1 minute out. Show me some flame love and let's get rocking and rolling, guys. It's about to get wild in here. I am so excited. Seconds away from the bottom of the hour. Larry's in the house. What's up, my friend? Larry, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying warm. Mystical Dream Fire has got flames. You know what time it is. Cleveland, Ohio representing. Brooklyn, New York in the house. We are seconds away from going live for tonight's live stream. Ask Me Anything, Multiple Sclerosis. Woo, UK is in the house. Tennessee is in the house. Show me flames, guys. We've got seconds away. Seconds away until there we go. Howdy, howdy. Hey, everybody. Aaron Boster here. Wow, am I excited to see all of you. It's been a minute since we've had a chance to get together, and I am thrilled to death to be here with you tonight. This is our monthly live stream. It's the last live stream of the year. It's December, guys, and I'm looking at the chat, and there's a lot of flames in the chat. Thank you for the chat love. I am super excited to be here. I can't believe that so many of you came out to join me tonight. There's already 184 of you. Woohoo! Now, my name is Aaron Boster. I'm an MS neurologist from sunny Columbus, Ohio. And that's a joke because there is no sun right now. It is cold, cold, cold. It was like negative 35 wind chill factor. I thought I was going to freeze to death over the weekend. Doing a little better now. I am coming at you live for this monthly live stream. And tonight, we are going to be doing an Ask Me Anything Q&A. We're going to be talking about MS. I do not have a didactic prepared for you. Instead, I would like to field your questions. And so here's the dealio. As you jump online, please share with me where you're coming on from. Let the community know where you hail from and where you represent. It's awesome to see this growing global online community get bigger and bigger. It's amazing to me. It fills my heart with love and joy. As we ask questions, please keep in mind, I cannot diagnose you. I cannot provide a treatment algorithm over the interwebs just by a question that you ask. And so it's very hard for me to do questions specific to an individual human on the interwebs. What works out much better is if you would kindly make your questions more generalizable so that everyone listening can benefit from the question and I can make the answer applicable to all the people listening. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask our moderators who have hard work in front of them, as you identify awesome questions, copy and paste it for me. Because your moderator tag is blue, it helps me see it despite my dyslexia, and I can find it so that I can answer the questions. Now, I have tried to prepare a couple silly different scenes for us tonight, and if the scenes aren't working, then you let me know. Okay, so the first question is coming from Jason Bell. Jason is an amazing MS advocate, quite a fella. And his question tonight is on point. He's asking about BTK. Any updates on BTK? So that's a fantastic question. Inhibitors. So that's, I'm going to write it in the chat. Bruton tyrosine kinase inhibitor. All right, so we're talking about Bruton tyrosine kinase inhibitors, or BTK inhibitors. And just to level set kind of what we're talking about here, this is a small molecule, it's a pill, that has been FDA approved for cancer. And it's a very effective cancer treatment for certain types of cancer. And it turns out that it looks like a really impressive drug in the setting of multiple sclerosis. And so there's been a couple phase 2 trials that have been completed with really encouraging results. And now we're engaged in phase 3 clinical trials. And so at the Boster Center for MS, we're running multiple trials looking at relapsing MS. We're actually doing 4 relapsing MS trials with BTK inhibitors. And we're looking at a secondary progressive MS trial with BTK inhibitors and a primary progressive MS trial with BTK inhibitors. Now, many different... Oh, hey guys, when you look at the screen there, you see that gal, Caitlin Kirk. Caitlin Kirk, Katie, is our clinic manager. She is an amazing woman. She looks like a human, but she's not. She's a superhero. Katie, it's great to see you tonight, and thank you for helping out and throwing some love our direction. We're talking about BTK inhibitors. We're talking about the ongoing phase 3 research. And to answer my friend's question, we don't have a readout yet for a really good reason. When you do a phase 3 trial with these BTK inhibitors, the clinical trials are long. They're 3 years long. And the first trial for evobrutinib, which is a product made by Merck Serono, they have locked to enrollment. Now, the second set of trials, the tolebrutinib trials made by Sanofi, those have locked to relapsing enrollment. And there's several other investigators, fenebrutinib made by Roche, and then there's products made by Biogen as well as Lilly, Eli Lilly, believe it or not. And so there's a lot of products coming down the pipeline. Now, when we're in this ongoing investigation phase, we don't get a readout. We don't get a scientific readout because it would bias the data. And so right now we are actively enrolling patients into those trials. The patients that are in the trials are actively participating in the trials. There are even people who are online tonight that are participating in BTK trials. Now, we don't have an update, but what we do have is a lot of hope. And I want to share with you why we're so hopeful about these BTK inhibitors. So the first thing is they don't seem to increase risk of infection. And that's a really big deal, particularly when we're still living in a global viral pandemic, and many of our highly effective therapies can suppress the immune response and increase risk of infection. And so the fact that protein tyrosine kinase inhibitors don't increase risk of infection, that's a pretty good thing. Now, mechanistically, they do two things which are really awesome sauce. And they bring to the table options for treatment that we presently don't have, at least from a mechanism of action standpoint. Some of the most effective medicines that are currently available to treat MS are the B-cell depleters. So medicines like, and they're very effective drugs. By knocking down B cells, they can suppress the MS immune response, but they also increase the risk of infection. Now, protein tyrosine kinase inhibitors, they block B-cell communication without murder. So they're not killing the cell, they're literally just plugging its ears like, la, 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 I can't hear you. And as a result, B-cell can't complete a signal, but it doesn't cause murder. And that's a really cool way of manipulating the adaptive immune response. Now, the second thing which is really cool and arguably cooler is that these drugs, these protein tyrosine kinase inhibitors, they can enter the central compartment, they can enter the brain and spinal cord area, and they can turn off activated microglia. So what the hey are microglia? And I'll even write that word in the chat just because it's... You see in the chat, I wrote this word microglia. Microglia are... they're part of the innate immune system, and they're involved in MS pathology, but we've never been able to touch them ever in the history of the field. These drugs, they turn off activated microglia in the brain. And so for both those reasons, we're very, very excited about BTK inhibitors. Now, that was not the question asked. The question was for updates, and I don't have any updates because we're literally in the middle of participation. And I just want to give a shout out and a strong thank you to all the people impacted by MS that are volunteering so that we can try to figure this out. That was an awesome question. I'm going to change screens. I know that you guys hate it when I do this. We'll just do a quick question like this, and then we'll jump back into me looking like a human. All right, so I'm going to scroll way back up to where I first saw the last question asked. Let's take a look here. And so Carla asks a question. She says, can vertigo be MS related? Started experiencing this today. And the answer is absolutely yes, yes, yes. So vertigo is the hallucination of spinning. So imagine if you're on a merry-go-round and you feel like you're spinning, or if you feel like the room is spinning by you. That's the definition of vertigo. And vertigo can occur because of lots of different neurological problems. The most common cause of vertigo and I'll write this in the chat, is benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, BPPV. So if you're not familiar with BPPV, you can do a Google search, and it is not caused by MS. It's just the most common cause of vertigo. It's when the little crystals in the inner ear get stuck, and so your body thinks it's going left even though it's not. Now, unfortunately, multiple sclerosis most certainly can cause vertigo. And there's fortunately treatments that we can use. I would definitely bring this to the attention of your MS neurologist so that we can ferret out what we need to do. If necessary, we can send you to a neuro-otologist. A neuro-otologist is a specialized neurologist who specializes in dizzy. And they can be very, very helpful. I have a couple friends that are neuro-otologists, and they're phenomenal, phenomenal guys. All right, so that was a question by Carla. Going to the next question. Sarah Woods asked, does MS attacking the myelin affect teeth? Nope. Great question. All right, so here Katie is asking a question. Diagnosed at 21 years ago in 2021, which means she's very young. There were only 3 DMTs on the market back then, the ABCs. And so that would be Avonex, Betaseron, and Copaxone. The medications have come such a long way. Do you see a cure on the horizon? Katie from Connecticut. So Katie from Connecticut, that's a fantastic question. And I think that the way that I would like to answer this is by talking about the evolution of MS therapies. So do we have a cure in sight? No, we don't. We really don't. We don't have a cure in sight because we're still learning about the immune response, like quite literally. We are still uncovering the immune response. I just shared with you in the last question that we are only now, with some of our newest research agents, able to touch the innate immune system, just touch it. And we've never been able to get there before. And so I don't think that it's realistic, to be honest, that we are going to solve a solution, a cure for MS in my lifetime. And I'm not saying that to be a Debbie Downer, but what I feel very passionately is that in the now, today, at the tail end of 2022, we can make MS boring. We can make MS boring. We can remove what I call macroscopic MS, so no more attacks, none. We can remove new spots on the MRI, no more spots, and we can prevent you from accruing neurological disability. Now, let's keep on keeping on. That was a really good question. This next one is also a really good question. And the question is, will menopause cause MS to be worse? Yes. Now, let me get off this because you guys are probably sick of me being an alien. So maybe this is a little bit better. And so the question that we're being asked now is, will menopause cause MS to be worse? And the answer is yes, unfortunately. Now, that's not the answer that you want. You want me to tell you no, but the answer is yes. And so it turns out that anytime a woman has a fluctuation in hormones. So when she starts puberty, and there's a fluctuation in hormones. With each menstrual cycle, there's a fluctuation in hormones. During pregnancy, there's a fluctuation in hormones. During delivery, there's a fluctuation in hormones. And during menopause, there's a massive fluctuation in hormones. And at each inflection point, you can see an uptick of MS disease activity. Now, that is really frustrating, and it's very, very common, and we can combat it. And so definitely bring that up to your MS neurologist. All right, next question. Joy is in the house. Joy, it's wonderful to see you. I hope you and your family are doing outstanding. She wants an update on remyelinization. And as of today, I don't have any new updates. So I did attend ECTRIMS 2 months back, and there was a lot of works in progress, but I don't think that we are any closer. The clinical trials are still ongoing, and I still remain very, very hopeful. It's my current perspective that for my patients that I care for in clinic, I want to keep your brain and your spinal cord in such good shape that when a remyelination agent becomes available, well, you're available to benefit from it. Now, before we take the next question, we're going to do an MS Water Challenge. And so if you have just joined me, MS Water Challenge. The MS Water Challenge. I've got my sparkling water right here. This is a very high-end Creuset brand. Delicious stuff. MS Water Challenge, yo. Drink up. Got to up your water game, guys. Woo! That was good. Okay, All right, let's jump back in the questions. I'm scrolling back up to where I left off. Let's see. All right, Bluthton. So Bluthton has been a long time viewer, very, very active on the channel. It's great to see you. Question is, what is the failure rate before you switch medicines for not working? One and done, or a higher rate of symptom lesion before switching? So that is, per his usual, a very outstanding question. And here, let's change up the picture pages here. So we'll go with this for a little bit. So this gets into what I refer to as the style of treatment. I don't mean style of treatment like, do you look good when you get dressed in the morning? I mean style like, how does the MS neurologist apply MS medications? And in what order do they sequence the medicines? Now, Bluthton, if you haven't seen it, I did make a YouTube video on 8 different styles of treatment. And I talk through one and done, slow escalation, fast escalation, early high efficacy, induction, de-escalation, and I went through kind of each one of those styles of treatment. Now, I'll share with you that most MS neurologists in the world hate, but I'm going to explain it to you nonetheless because it's the most common model used. The escalation style works like this. I diagnose you and I start you off on an okay drug. It's either mild or moderate in its efficacy, but it's very safe and lovely from a tolerability standpoint, at least in theory. Then we see how it goes. And if you do great, well, then I'm a great doctor and you're a great patient and that's a great drug and yay. Now, if you don't do great, don't fret. We'll simply upgrade your drug to something that's more effective. It might have a less attractive side effect profile, but it's an upgrade. And then we'll see how it goes. And on the second drug, if you're doing great, then that's a great drug and I'm a great doctor and you're a great patient and yay. And if that doesn't work, don't worry about it. We'll upgrade. Now, I think that's a bunch of BS. And the reason I say that to you is when I say it doesn't work out, what do I mean? What does it mean to not work out? Well, it means that you have brain damage. It means that you've accrued brain or spinal cord damage, adequate that we had a clinical attack or saw new spots on the MRI, and I'm not okay with that, particularly not if it's my loved one. And so it also suggests that doctors miss nothing. Impossible. Never ever miss any new spots, never ever miss any new disability, never ever miss any new failure of the litmus test of life. And come on, guys, this is simply not true. Doctors aren't that good, right? We don't ask enough questions. We don't listen carefully enough. We might miss stuff. Moreover, it assumes that the patient is 100% transparent, right? Meaning that the patient is going to come clean with any and everything that may happen. That's not the real world. And so all too often, I feel like patients are left on drugs that don't work. And Bluthton, this gets to your question. So when is too much too much? Now, in the escalation style of management, there are fast escalators and slow escalators. And I'm delighted that the slow escalators are dying out. Literally, they're retiring and they're dying, and that was an old generation. Slow escalation is where I put you on a therapy and then you have to like basically near explode before I'll upgrade. So you have to have multiple different clinical attacks, multiple new spots on MRI, and then finally we'll begrudgingly upgrade you. And fortunately, people don't do that so much anymore. What we see more often is what people refer to as a fast escalator. So I put you on a low efficacy drug or a medium low efficacy drug. And then the very first thing I see, then I upgrade you. So if you have one new spot, bam, I upgrade you. Or if you have one attack, bam, I upgrade you. Or you're not tolerating it, bam, I upgrade you. And that is a little bit better than a slow escalator, but I still am not okay with it because, again, it's predicated on we're going to catch everything and miss nothing. And it's still predicated on the flawed logic that you have to suffer brain damage before I can upgrade your drug. Now, this question of style is super important. And the reason it's super important, Bluthton, is you need to make sure that you and your doctor are aligned. You need to be aligned with that style. So if your doctor is going to be a slow escalator and you want induction therapy, you're not seeing eye to eye. If your doctor is a slow escalator and you want to start with highly effective drug, you're not going to see eye to eye. And if your doctor's a slow escalator and you don't want to have brain damage before you go on something good, you're not going to see eye to eye. And so if you look at my YouTube video, I actually suggest that you talk with your clinician. Say, hey, what is your style of treatment? Now, I've been planning YouTube videos for this coming next quarter. And in a couple months, I have another video on style of treatment. So that'll be coming out around March. Great question, Bluepton. Of course, you had a great question. Thank you again, my friend. Let's keep on keeping on. A lot of love in the chat. Thank you, guys. So Sandy says, Southern New Jersey. We're not going to hold that against you. I'm teasing. Just curious. I just found out that I have a new rather large lesion. I'm over 60. How much would that affect progression? This is the first new activity I've had in 5 years. So again, I can't comment about you specifically, Sandy, because I don't have enough information to do that. But what I can say is you make a really, really important point. 60 is the new 40. And the idea that we would be ageist and simply stop someone's therapy because they have their 55th birthday or stop someone's therapy because they celebrate their 60th birthday is BS. It's complete crap, in my opinion. And here's an example of a nice lady who hasn't had any disease activity in quite some time, 5 years, and now has a really big spot. Now, can that impact disability? Yeah. Can that impact progression? Yes. Does it suggest that your immune system is a lot younger than you may think? Yeah. Does it suggest that you still need treatment? Yes. And so when I see that, it just reminds me that we're not done at 60. It's not like, your immune system's all shriveled up and it's not doing anything. It's still very active and we still need to treat it. So thank you for sharing that with me. You are young at heart, younger than you thought. Now, if you're following along, we're not going to do the MS Water Challenge. This is actually some adult apple juice. Cheers. All right, let's look at the next question, guys. I am having a blast with this. Thank you so much for... I have never seen that in my life. Here's a question from some amazing people out in Texas. Do you review your previous videos from years ago to augment or reconsider options based on new data? And how has your opinion of MS treatments changed from your initial thoughts as a new physician? Wow, that's actually a two-part question. And that's a really deep question. So let's take both of them. What the heck? The first question is, do you review previous videos from years ago to augment or reconsider opinions based on new data? 100% I do. So I think it's my requirement for my job to stay on the bleeding cutting edge of what's new in MS. I am an MS specialist. I don't do general neurology. And so if I'm going to be useful to your family, I better know my stuff and I better stay on the pulse of the field. And sometimes I will say something in a video that I believe to be true only to learn later that it's not true. And I'm going to give you two examples where that happened on my channel. So in 2019, I made a video on a brand new infection that had just reared its ugly head in China, in Wuhan, China. And it was called the coronavirus, and I didn't know how to pronounce it, and I called it the coronavirus. And it recommended not wearing masks. And so I made a video where I talked about this infection way over in China that I didn't know very much about, but I had studied, and I talked about the CDC's recommendation not to wear masks. Well, you guys know what happened. COVID-19 rocked our world and is still rocking our world. And it turns out that wearing masks is really, really important. And so I had to change what I said, and I had to update what I said, of course, because I don't want to provide outdated information. Specifically as it relates to COVID, when I make a COVID video, I always put the date that I make the video somewhere in the title or in the description so that people can think about, hey, that was made 3 years ago. I'll give you another example. So in the past 2 years, I have become really, really interested in nutrition to help people impacted by MS. I've become very interested in nutrition. I've become very interested in supplementation, nutritional supplements in MS. And so I've been doing a lot of learning. Now, if you look at my very first video that I made about diet and MS, it was one of my most popular videos. It had like 40,000 views. And it was wrong. It was bullshit. It was what I was taught in med school. I didn't make it up. I mean, it was what I was taught. and it was about eating less and exercising more, and about avoiding fats and stuff like that. It was exactly what I was taught in med school, a cardiac diet, and it turns out that's false. It's not true. It's not accurate. Many of you know that I went through a weight loss journey where I got really heavy and then I lost 40 pounds, and it doesn't work to use the traditional Western method. And so even though that video was really popular, I turned it off. So you can't find it on my channel because I turned it off because it's not accurate. And so the first answer, Mike, to your question is 100%. I absolutely go back through old videos, and if they're outdated, I either make a new one to update it, or I'll even turn an old video off, because it's really important to me that you can trust what I tell you as being current. So thank you. That was a great question. Now, the second question is even more intense. And so MS Water Challenge, while we get ready to answer the second question. Oh, that's good stuff. So the second question is, has your opinion of treatments of MS changed from your initial thought as a new physician? And the answer is, oh my God, yes, like big time. Now, some of you know that I had the honor to train under a great man. I was trained by Dr. Omar Azur Khan. Dr. Khan deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of multiple sclerosis. Years. And when I finished my tutelage, I took my first big boy job at a big university, the Ohio State University, and I was going to set up my practice, and here we go. And I did what I was taught. I did what he taught me. And back then, 2000s, we started everyone on Copaxone, and that was what I was taught to do. And I put every single person on Copaxone, just like my mentor did. And then I would monitor, and if things didn't go well, then I would upgrade. The fast escalation model that I was talking about earlier. And as time went on, I started to get nervous that what I was doing wasn't working, and that I was allowing people to accrue disability. I was allowing them to have disease sneak by despite my medicine. And I had sort of a big crisis in my head. And what I came to was that the way that I was trained was not the way I wanted to practice. And I changed the way I practiced. And I have become literally world renowned for my aggressive, assertive style in MS. I like to remind people that I want to bring a SWAT team to a knife fight, because I don't want to fight a knife fight. I don't know how to fight with a knife. I'll get cut. I want to put 15 guys in front of me that look like G.I. Joe, that have muscles on their muscles, and I want them to stand with flak jackets and semi-automatic weapons, and I'm going to stand behind them like this and give MS the bird and fight MS that way. I'm going to bring a SWAT team to a knife fight. It changed the way that I practice. My mentor, Dr. Khan, has passed away. I miss him. He was a great man. He's a really difficult person. And I wonder if he was around what he would say. I don't know. I'm not sure he would agree with me, but I feel very firmly that what I'm doing is the right thing for the patients and the families that I take care of. So that was a great question. Thank you very much for asking it. We have another question from Desiree's queuing it up for us. Thank you. So Daniel asks this question: binocular vision dysfunction in MS. What's the connection and good things to help it? All right. So we're talking about some binocular vision. So first of all, you have a left eye and a right eye, and they are yoked. So they're linked in your brain. They're linked together. So when you look left, both eyes look left together. And when you look right, both eyes look right together, right? So they're yoked. And the circuitry that yokes your eyes is in the base of your brain. And if there's an MS attack in that part of your brain, they can become unyoked. And if they become unyoked and you look left, maybe just this eye looks left and the other one doesn't move. You look right, you look left, you look right, you look left, you look in. And so this eye is misbehaving. And that's actually extremely common in multiple sclerosis. Now, the good news is there's lots of things that we can do to try to help. Your best bet, bang for your buck, is to go to a neuro-ophthalmologist. And let me write down that word, neuro-ophthalmologist. Bam. So a neuro-ophthalmologist is a subspecialist where they did neurology and then they did ophthalmology, or they did ophthalmology and then neurology later. And they are wizards of the eyes. And they can help you figure out what's going on, and they can help you come up with options to treat it. Sometimes you can simply put prism test. Test. Can you hear me now? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Mary had a little lamb. Woohoo! All right, we're back on. Oh my goodness gracious. Sorry guys. I promise I'm not going to quit my day job. So I feel much more competent at managing MS than I do managing a live stream. I'm very sorry about that, guys. I'm really glad. Let's say thank you to Katie Kirk that messaged me and said, hey, excuse me, sir, but there's nothing online. All right, so gosh, that was frustrating. Thank you for hanging in there. There's 273 of you that didn't leave. I am just honored. Let's jump back up in the questions and keep on keeping on. Scrolling up to try to find where we left off. All right, here's a nice question. So Mike asks a great question. He says, hey, listen, the last 2 years, telehealth has been awesome. Any chance of it coming back? And so if there is a silver lining to a global viral pandemic, I think it's telemedicine. At least in my personal life, I think it's telemedicine because I think that it opened up a whole new way of seeing people impacted by MS. Now, is it my opinion that we can make the whole thing only telemedicine? No, I don't. I tried for a long time to do really accurate neurological examinations on telemedicine, where I'm having you do this stuff, and it just doesn't work very well. But we can game out a treatment plan on telemedicine very effectively. But we can review MRIs on telemedicine very effectively. There's a lot of things that we can do online. And so where I hope that we land is a hybrid. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. I like to see my clinic patients at the Boster Center for MS twice a year in the office. Twice a year. Because if you come in twice a year, I can do a full neuro exam and we can do MS testing and we can do all the things. And then all the rest of the time, we can see you remotely. Now, the unfortunate situation is there's no such thing as a national medical license. That doesn't exist. And so right now I have an Ohio license and there's another state without having that state license. And there's some things that are changing. There's something called a compact license, which Ohio doesn't offer yet, but when they do, I will apply for it because it would then allow me to see patients in other states that have compact licenses. So we're not there yet. I do think that we learned that telemedicine is very viable. I think it's a great way of seeing people impacted by MS. And I agree with you that it needs to stick around. That was a great question. Thank you for asking it. All right, let me take a look here and try to find the next question. So, Michelle Sears writes a great question. She says, does anyone prescribe Copaxone anymore? And, I have very mixed feelings about that. There are drugs in 2023 that are better than Copaxone, period. And I do not think it's appropriate for a neurologist to start a new patient on Copaxone. And I do not think it's appropriate for a neurologist to switch someone to Copaxone. The only way that I'm going to have a patient in my clinic who is on Copaxone on it 100 years ago, and they've been stable as Mabel, and they have proven year after year after year that they are literally a super responder to Copaxone. You think about it. So this is an iPhone. I have no idea, right? It's an iPhone 8 or who knows? I don't know. And this came out a couple years ago. Now you think about the phones in 2000 let's say the phones in 1995 when Copaxone came out, 95, 96, somewhere in there. So the cell phones of 95 didn't really, they were like bag phones, where you'd carry a briefcase and it had a phone attached to it. And a phone call was like $1 million a minute. And there were no games on the phone. There was no computer on the phone. There was no voice translation on the phone. None of that. We've come a long way in our phone technology, and we've come a long way in our MS technology. And so, yes, I have a couple patients that are still on Copaxone. Yes, they are freaking super responders, and it's very, very rare. But it's my opinion that if a doctor newly prescribes you Copaxone, you should go running for the hills and find a more up-to-date doctor. It's just my opinion. All right, let's keep looking for questions. So Stefan asks, should a person stop their disease-modifying therapy prior to surgery to reduce the risk of infection? That depends on a bunch of stuff. Now, first of all, that's a question that you have to ask your surgeon and your multiple sclerosis specialist. They need to weigh in, right? Because there are so many variables that I don't have access to, so I can't really give you a proper answer, right? So one thing that we need to be thinking about when we're looking at a surgery is what's the risks of the surgery and what's the anticipated healing time. So there are surgeries that the recovery is really quick, and there are surgeries where the recovery is like not quick at all. The second thing we have to look at is what drug are you on? Because if you're on an immunomodulatory drug that does not suppress the immune system, giddy up. If you're on an immunosuppressant, it depends on which and what time. And so what I'll share with you is there is a place and a plan to get us through, but I don't know that I would just arbitrarily stop. I would definitely talk to your MS neurologist first. I would talk to the surgeon first, and I would be very planful. I would submit to you that the vast majority of medicines, we don't stop when someone has a surgery. We just keep on keeping on, but you got to talk because there's too many variables there for me to be able to give you a really good answer. All right, let's see here. A lot of people were trying to help me by telling me that they couldn't hear. Sorry about that. We've got sound back, and let's look for some more questions. Let's see here. Here's a great question. So Ren Iberi asks, how often do you need a spine MRI? So that's a good question. You think about multiple sclerosis. MS affects the brain and the spinal cord. And it doesn't really care about which one. It'll do either. And some people tend to have more brain involvement. Some people tend to have more spinal cord involvement. Now, I think it's a best practice to get a MRI of the brain every year, at least until we're 60, every year. And I like to get a spine MRI, cervical and thoracic, at the time of diagnosis. And then I will repeat the spine, but not every year. I do it about every other year. And why? If I get a spine every single year, insurance throws up big flags and says, no. But if I get a spine every other year, I really don't have a problem. And it's less likely that you have spine lesions without clinical symptoms, whereas it's more likely that you could have all kinds of lesions up in the noggin, but without having symptoms. So that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I am going to try to change screens. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4. Mary had a little lamb. Over. All right, so let's see. Are you able to hear me? Testing, testing. You guys can hear me? All right, okay. Okay, thanks. I just want to make sure that you can hear me before I wax poetic as a Viking. So one of our moderators, Jen, shares that compact licensure has changed mental health care. You're absolutely right. I mean, a clinician can provide care across state lines 100%. And I think there's probably no better example than in mental health care. And so I'm really glad to hear that that's a thing. Let's look for some other questions. So Amy asks, does Tysabri cause urinary tract infections? Do you think all UTIs need antibiotics? That's a great question. And so I will answer it as a Viking. Maybe I could answer it as a cool guy. Oh, I'm going to be a cool guy. Okay, so I'm going to answer it like this. Haha. So Tysabri increases the risk of urinary tract infections. Now, the vast majority of my patients on Tysabri do not have urinary tract infections, but I have had a couple patients where literally almost every month they had a UTI. And in rare circumstances, we literally had to take someone off their their Tysabri and put them on something else because they had such frequent urinary tract infections. But that's extremely uncommon. Now, the question of do all UTIs need antibiotics is really, I guess I would say no. I don't think that all UTIs need antibiotics. A symptomatic UTI most definitely does. And I think one of the reasons that we want to be aggressive about identifying and managing UTIs is they can trigger pseudo-attacks. Now, so if you are one of these rare folks who does in fact have multiple urinary tract infections while on Tysabri, you might want to bring that up to your MS neurologist and say, hey, do we need to do something prophylactically? Do I need to take an antibiotic every day or every time I have sex, or do I need to do something different? Or might we even need to consider a different therapy? All right, so let's take a look oh, look at that. Oh, I look very, very dapper. Haha. All right, let's take another question while I pretend to be this dapper gentleman. All right. So Sarah Wood says, I find myself clenching my jaw and I have to concentrate to relax. Is this something that's MS related? Generally, no. It's oftentimes related to stimulants. So when I give patients stimulant medicines like Adderall, Ritalin, Vyvanse, and even medicines like Provigil and Nuvigil, modafinil and armodafinil, sometimes can cause jaws to get really, really tight. It's a real pain in the tushy. Sometimes we can provide a bite splint that people wear at night, but it still can be a problem during the day. It's oftentimes, in my experience, related to a stimulant if the person's on a stimulant. All right, let's take a look here. The mic had cut out and now it's back on. So Fish and Floral said that their doctor offered them an interferon and they said, no, I agree with you. There are drugs that are much, much better. So Lemon Peel Angelfish, one of our amazing moderators out in New Zealand, shared that the mic was cutting in and out. And I'm really, really hopeful that the mic's doing a bit better now. All right, let's take a look here. We've got another fantastic question from Mike and Diane. So some doctors recommend either Kesimpta or Ocrevus prior to Lemtrada. If Lemtrada is recommended first, would you consider recommending Kesimpta or Ocrevus? Or are they on the same level? So that's a great question. And the answer is no. I feel firmly that alemtuzumab Lemtrada, from an efficacy standpoint, is a step up over all the other DMTs. So I think that I would place alemtuzumab Lemtrada, and then I would place Ocrevus and Kesimpta. Now, oftentimes the doctor will say, well, let's try Ocrevus first because there's less side effects and it's easier to tolerate, which is true. But from an efficacy standpoint, if we're going for the most efficacious FDA-approved drug, I think you know the answer. All right, what else do I got? Let's see here. Audio problems. I'm so sorry, guys. So Ren Iberi writes, I get an MRI spine every couple years. Someone else asked about the frequency. Yeah, so I think having one every couple years minimum is a really good idea. So here's an example of an escalation model. Ursula shares that she was put on GA, Copaxone, a year ago, got some spots, and then was upgraded to Kesimpta. And so that's an escalation style. So let's see here. More questions. So Sarah says, how often should... The way that I would answer that is, first off, we have to talk about when we're trying to diagnose someone. So we may be getting serial MRIs as part of the diagnosis. Now, once we've established the diagnosis, then I like to get an MRI brain about once a year just to make sure that, that we're not picking up any new spots, things that we don't want to see, but, that creep in. Let me get off of this. Can you guys hear me? The mic's okay? All right. Let's look for some more questions. So Marla is in the house. Marla, I hope you're doing well. I love seeing your name pop up there. How long do you wait to talk to your patients after their MRI? So that's a good question. So the way that I like to think of the MRI is it's a really stressful thing for a patient. They've waited all year and they're going to stick their head in a scanner and they're going to find out whether there are new spots. And there's a lot of anxiety surrounding that. There's a lot of emotion surrounding that. So it's my strong preference that I wait less than 1 day. So my preference is my patient comes into Columbus, gets scanned in the morning, I see them in the afternoon, and I show them their scans that same afternoon. That's my strong preference. I don't want to get a scan and then talk about it weeks later because a lot can happen and that creates a lot of opportunities for anxiety. So Amelia asks, Ocrevus or Kesimpta? Any opinions? Or are they mostly the same? So they're both high efficacy medicines. They're both B-cell depleters. I have more experience with ocrelizumab. I've used it longer. And I guess if I'm honest, I have a bias towards Ocrevus. Now that doesn't mean Kesimpta is not good because it is good. It's a very good drug. I just have more experience with Ocrevus and I don't like asking people to take shots. And I don't think that it's likely that every single person will always take the shot exactly what they're supposed to. Whereas, everyone comes in to see me twice a year. And so if you come in twice a year and I infuse you when you're there, I know that you're treated. So I think they're both excellent. I wouldn't say no to either, but if I was picking between the two, I have a predilection or a biased preference towards Ocrevus. All right, let's see what else we got cooking. Jim writes, I have an MRI in the coming morning. What do you do for claustrophobia? That is a great question because I have a lot of claustrophobia and the idea of climbing in a scanner scares the hey out of me. So I empathize with people that are claustrophobic. So let me share with you a technique that I developed that works pretty darn well for my patients. And I actually have a YouTube video on this. I'm going to switch the screen up. Make sure you can still hear me. You can hear me? All right. And here's my technique for handling an MRI. Step one is the night before the MRI, no sleeping. Literally, I want you to stay up all night and make yourself insanely tired. If you're not sure what to do all night, watch my YouTube videos. I think we recently published 550th video, so there's plenty to keep you up all night long. You'll be sick and tired of my voice. And then step two is when you Now, 5 milligrams of Valium, for those that are not familiar, is kind of like drinking a 6-pack of beer. Step 3 is when you lay down on the gantry, close your eyes and do not open them for the Pope. If the Pope taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, I need to talk to you, say, Father, give me a second here. I'm going to have an MRI. So if you don't sleep the night before the scan, you take a 6-pack, 1 Valium, and you close your eyes, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a really expensive nap and you're going to have an outstanding picture. And the fourth comment is that you have to have someone drive you home because you stayed up all night and just got lit. So that works very, very well with claustrophobia. Absolutely. All right, what else we got here? We got a question from Diane, and Diane writes, approximately 4 months I've been experiencing left wrist pain that comes and goes. Numbness of the left thumb for about a year. It spread to my other fingertips. Is this a new lesion? I don't know. So that's a great question, and it brings up a most excellent point. So Diana is not a book. She's not a computer. She's not a set of symptoms. She's a human being who is experiencing some stuff. She's experiencing that her hand's numb. Now, is the hand numb because of the spinal cord lesion from MS, or is it numb because of carpal tunnel? I don't know. And there are testing that we can do to help sort it out. So neurological testing, neuro exam can sometimes sort it out. EMG testing can sort it out, and an MRI can sort it out. And so we need to do a workup so we can figure out what's causing it. Great question. So our next question, La Little writes, is there any proof that DMTs actually improve mobility in MS and decrease likelihood of disability? Yes, 100 million %. That is proven with class 1 evidence. So yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. The answer to your question is yes. So this is a great question from MT, who says, do you accept out-of-state patients who find their way to the office? I 100% do. We see people literally from around the globe. I'm honored that I have patients that come to see us from the Middle East. We have patients that come and see us from South America. We have some patients that come see us from Europe. We have a lot of patients that come from all over the United States. And so if you do want to come from somewhere else, call the clinic and we can sort out exactly how we do that. I'm going to put the number in the chat. You can call that number. It's 1-614-304-3444. And you're going to leave a message and talk to either Beth or Amanda, and they're going to hook you up and figure it out. All right, so Christine Kenny has an ageist doctor. So she says, my doctor told me I'm too old for Lemtrada. Sorry. I'm 50. I asked for it when I was 47. What are your thoughts? I've only been on Copaxone. So I think that's wrong. And I don't think it's fair to be ageist. And Christina, as you saw earlier in this chat, there was a 60-year-old that had a really big new lesion after 5 years of quiet disease. So I have a very biased opinion, but it makes me a little sassy because it's not your doctor's brain. It's your brain. It's not your doctor's risk. It's your risk. It's not your doctor's life. It's your life. It's not your doctor's insurance money. It's your insurance money. And if you are comfortable with upfront risk and complexity in exchange for the potential to have quiet disease, I think that personally you're allowed. It's my 2 cents. All right, what else we got cooking here? Let's see. Darla's queued up a question for me. Can you another relapse while having a relapse? All right, so I think what this question from Kelsey asks is, can you have relapse 1 and then before you recover have a second relapse? And where I would say theoretically that might be possible, that's not what I would expect to see. Now, what I do see is a little bit different, where someone has an attack which affects one part of their brain, and as the inflammation extends and grows, as the lesion grows, it hits other areas of brain, and so we pick up other symptoms. That's called a multifocal attack, and it could start as a numb leg, which over a week crawls up the leg and starts to involve the other leg, and then in the process you lose your bladder, and you start to develop some weakness of your upper leg. Right? It's a multifocal attack that's involving multiple different things at once. Absolutely. All right. The Flying Man asks, do you have recommendations if the 3 doctors I have seen with MRIs so far don't put any urgency on me getting to see a neurologist? Obviously, others can keep calling places. So, I guess what I would say is you are a you expert and you care more about you than anybody else, including those 3 doctors. And so sometimes you have to be an advocate for yourself and say, hey, I understand that we're not finding a lot or what have you, but I would feel better if I went to see a neurologist. So send me to a neurologist. And I think that's a fair request. It's my opinion. So Crystal asks a question. Any suggestions for bowel issues with nerve problems? Would use the bathroom without even knowing it, afraid to leave the house. And this is such a common problem. Now, if you would like to make an adult miserable, mess with their bowel, bladder, or sexual function. And here's an example, and I'm so sorry to hear that you're dealing with this, Crystal. So there are a lot of things that we can do to help with bowels. All right. So one of the things we do is we can look very carefully at your diet. And we may need to massively change the kind of food you're eating. We may need to up your probiotic game. We may need to up your prebiotic game. We may need to up your fiber. We may need to add in these kind of supplements to really help change your gut microbiome and to help your gut so that you're not having that problem. That sounds absolutely terrible. Now, there are situations where MS can cause incontinence of stool. I've had attacks where we need to give steroids to make that better. And the punchline here is we have to touch bases with your MS neurologist and say, hey, I got a poopy problem, and help sort out a way to make that problem better. All right, let's see if we can change some things here. Testing, testing. You guys can hear me okay? All right, this is working. I'm so nervous that like the microphone might go out. All right, so Caitlin Kirk up in the house. She is sharing that the Boster Center for MS has recently started to provide amazing supplements to patients. And so Katie's talking about that in the chat. I'm not ready to discuss that just yet, but boy, is it getting really exciting. Follow-up question from Even So It as well. How long do symptoms for multifocal lesions typically spread? A week, a month long? That's a good question. I would say in the order of a week to weeks, not months. So that's a very good question. I really like that question. Thank you. So here's a question from FF. FF says, how bad will my MS progress? Will I be disabled? I'm only 24. I just got diagnosed. I'm on Ocrevus. And so that is a very well articulated fear. And I think that every single family impacted by MS can relate to what you're asking. I just got diagnosed. I got on a therapy. What's it look like? And that can be really, really scary. So there are several prognostic factors that your MS neurologist can go through with you. Certain things about your demographics, certain things about your MRI, certain things about your initial presentation, which can help guide us prognostically, meaning like how bad does it look it's going to be. Now, there are 5 things that I would recommend that you do to live your best life despite having MS, and to number 1 is not to smoke stuff. Smoking speeds up MS by about 50%, so that's a really bad idea. Number 2 is to exercise as part of your lifestyle. Now, when I say exercise as part of your lifestyle, that means that you don't get a reward when you do it, and you don't get a punishment when you don't, all right? So I have a lifestyle of brushing my teeth. I just do it all the time, and I don't talk about it. You don't see a tweet, Boster brushed his teeth. It's just something I do, and if I don't do it, then I'll just do it later. And so I need you to exercise in a similar fashion. That's number 2. Number 3 is to supplement low levels of vitamin D and to eat smart. And increasingly, I'm spending more and more time talking to patients and families about nutrition. Number 4 is to take the most effective DMT possible and make sure it's working. They've started you on Ocrevus, and that's a highly effective DMT. We just need to make sure it's working. And number 5, is a commitment to daily mindfulness. All right. So that's Aaron's not secret recipe for being 5 for 5 in your fight against MS. And I recently made a series of videos on my channel about being 5 for 5, where I literally broke down how we go through that process. And so actually, if I could ask you guys a question, so there's 283 of you that are on, and if every one of you would answer me, I would be grateful. I recently have made a series of videos on this channel talking about disease and talking about ways of combating it, and specifically talking about being 5 for 5. And it's a really important topic to me, but the YouTube analytics suggest you guys didn't like it very much. And so I'm really, really curious. If you didn't like the last month's worth of videos, what didn't you like about it? Like, tell me so that I can learn from you, so that I can make content that you're really excited about. So please share with me, if you didn't love the videos of the last month or so, then let me know what about it you didn't like. I would really benefit from that. Thank you. All right, let's take a look here. Oh, Rennie Berry says you love the printing press. So this is a printing press that my ex-wife reconstructed years and years ago, and it is fully working. and I don't know how to use it. It's a pretty amazing machine. Thank you guys for asking that question. Helene is in the house. Helene, it is great to see you. I hope that you and yours are doing well. The ATA 188 study is exciting. Yes. I'm very hopeful. Yes. Is it prime time? No. Do we have a final readout? No. So I am keeping tabs on that to the very best of my ability. I'm very, very excited about it. It has a lot of hope and a lot of potential. Katerina says that she is 5 for 5, and I think that's freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. I love it. All right, guys, it is 7:30. We've gone for an hour. I've had arguably the best time that I could possibly have during a live stream. This has been amazing. There's 284 of you that have jumped on. I can't believe that. Thank you very, very much. You know, when I started this YouTube channel back in 2015, I never in a million years dreamed of an online global village like this, supporting me and supporting each other, and I want to thank you for that. My name's Aaron Boster. I'm an MS neurologist out of sunny Columbus, Ohio. It's a great honor that I get to care for people impacted by MS and their families, and it's a great honor that I get to talk to you tonight. Thank you very, very much. If you would like to support my efforts and what we're doing, simply watch a video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Those actions matter, and they really help the channel grow because it teaches the YouTube algorithm that you like this content. So I will continue to make Monday morning videos. I will continue to do these monthly live streams as long as you guys like them. If you have questions that I didn't get to, do not fret. I go through them and I'll answer them in videos later. So until that time, or until I see you at the Boster Center for MS, this is Aaron Boster saying, have a fantastic end to your 2022. God bless and take care. Be safe, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.